What this museum is able to do through the arms and armor that we have is tell the story of conflict and how the people, it's not just the pieces that we have in the museum, but it's the people behind it. And so we are able to tell those stories in a way where when people come to the museum, they don't necessarily all have to go in there and go, okay, what's this all about? They can actually very easily find out what it is about. And they're able to see the chronological order of the technology, the artistry, the craftsmanship, and and essentially how we got here today.
What is really special about the museum is that it's only 10 years old. And when you think of a history museum, you think of an institution that's probably been collecting for 100 years. But when you think about a new history museum, which almost seems like those two words don't go together, what you're looking at is a museum that can be very selective as to the stories that it tells and the objects that it uses to tell them. And that really gives us the possibility of not saying, oh, but this is how we always did this, because there really is no always. It gives us a chance to be a museum for the 21st century and to think about what is a history museum doing in the 21st century and how can it contribute.
Now the Yankees was plainly visible all up the hillside. You could count the number of their regiments by counting their flags. We could see their cannons, their huge war dogs frowning down upon us, ready at any moment to belch forth their fire and smoke.
You see a lot of museums doing historic interpretations, maybe not on the scale that we're able to do it. I mean, you see a lot of museums, they might only have a certain amount of time. We, of course, can go back 1,000 years just with what we have. Actually, what we have now goes all the way back 2,500 years. It goes back to the Battle of Marathon. And we have 2,500 years of history that we're able to tell, and there are so many stories. What we try to do is to tell stories, yes, of people that are well known. I'll throw out Molly Pitcher. But the thing is that we don't try to reenact it because we aren't those people. The only thing we can do, we can't recreate it. We can only interpret. We interpret our history. And what we're able to do is to bring it to our patrons in a way that is dynamic, and they're able to hold pieces that are reproductions that are as historically accurate as we can possibly get them, even down to the clothing. We do our best to make it tactile and to make it immediate.
7,742 glass balls launched from a trap in 9 hours. I think that demonstrated pretty successfully. I was up to the challenge.
Well, I think our historic interpretations are important because they do look often not just at famous individuals, which is what you might expect, but they look at secondary characters. You know, the guide who helped Teddy Roosevelt, the person who was the wife of the guy who was the cannoneer in the American Revolution. Like, how did regular lives work? I mean, we don't do children much for obvious reasons, but we can show children how ordinary people dealt with what seemed like these massive things in history.
I think what our strength is the fact that we tell the stories behind what you see in the museum. A lot of times you go to museums and you see something behind the glass and it's all very good, but you don't really get a sense of the person who might have held it. And especially with the Frazier collection, every piece in it has a provenance. And that's what makes it incredibly special, is that it's just not one of 20,000 pieces. It is one of 20,000 that might have an incredible story about it. And I think that's the strength, is that we tell the stories behind and of the people and of the events which they were part of. I think that we learn from conflict. We are still dealing with the ramifications of the American Civil War today. It's not ancient history. Yes, it might have happened 130 years ago, but we are still dealing with it. If you go to the South, it's still very prevalent. And you know, the civil rights movement, getting up into the equal rights movement of the women and the suffrage of the late 19th century and the early 20th century, it's still happening today. So I think that's what, you know, we go back so we can learn from the past, as it says to paraphrase Mr. Frazier, we learn from our past, see where we are in the present, and how we can be better in the future. That's why I think that we should always remember. You should never forget where you come from and what made you. That's something as we're able to, throughout the museum, is be able to tell the stories in such a way that people can see history through clear eyes.